Admiral KYO stood in the command center of the Coalition flagship, watching another star system die. The massive view screen showed nothing but empty space where the Altera system used to be. 15 billion people had called that place home just 3 days ago. Now there was nothing but cosmic dust and the fading heat signatures of destroyed planets. His aide, Lieutenant Hannah, approached quietly. Her usually bright purple skin had turned pale with fear. "Sir, the reconnaissance drones. Confirm it. The Vex swarm stripped everything. Even the asteroids are gone." Keo's scaled hands gripped the command rail tighter. At 60 years old, he had seen 3 wars, to plagues, and the collapse of the Outer Rim territories. But nothing like this. The Vex didn't just kill, they consumed everything. Metal, rock, organic matter, even the energy from stars themselves. They left behind perfect vacuum, as if entire solar systems had never existed. "How many systems is that now?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. 15 in the last cycle. So, at this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in less than a month. KYO closed his eyes for a moment. The Coalition had tried everything. Their best fleets couldn't even scratch Vex armor. Their most advanced weapons bounced off like toys. Even their experimental phase torpedoes weapons that could crack moons did nothing more than annoy. The swarm. The worst part wasn't the losing. It was how the Vex fought. They didn't just destroy, they captured. Millions of Coalition citizens were taken alive, their minds ripped from their bodies and trapped in digital prisons. The few rescued survivors spoke of endless torture, of consciousness forced to experience pain for what felt like centuries in simulated hells. "Sir," came another voice from the communications station. "Admiral Wren is requesting emergency conference with all remaining fleet commanders." KYO nodded. Admiral Wren commanded what was left of the Coalition's military, barely 300 ships from the original fleet of 20,000. The conference would be short. They had no good options left. The holographic meeting room materialized around him. 5 other admirals appeared as blue projections, their faces showing the same exhaustion and desperation he felt. Admiral Wren, the elderly woman from the aquatic Kepler worlds, spoke first. "The situation is beyond critical," she said without any formal greeting. "Our evacuation fleets can't move fast enough. The civilian ships are breaking down from overuse. We have maybe 2 weeks before the Vex reach New Terra." Admiral Dell, the youngest of the group, leaned forward. "What about the experimental weapons from the research stations, the quantum disruptors? Tested and failed." Wren replied flatly. "The Vex adapted to them within hours. Everything we throw at them just makes them stronger." Silence filled the room. KYO had seen this moment coming for weeks. They were out of options, out of time, out of hope. The greatest civilization in the galaxy was about to become extinct, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "There is one possibility," Hannah whispered behind him. All eyes turned toward the young lieutenant. She looked nervous but determined. "The archives, sir. The old emergency protocols from before the Great Expansion. There are references to something called the Reserve Defense Protocol." Admiral Wren frowned. "That's ancient history, Lieutenant. Most of those records are corrupted or incomplete." "Not all of them, ma'am." Hannah pulled up a holographic display. "I've been working with the archive AI for weeks, trying to piece together fragments. There are mentions of a backup defense force. Something separate from regular Coalition military. A secret fleet," Admiral Dell asked skeptically. "Why would we hide military assets?" "It's not hidden, sir. It's distant. The protocols mention sending distress signals to a reserve species, something about emergency activation codes." KYO studied the ancient text floating in air. Most of it was corrupted, but he could make out fragments. Words like extreme circumstances and final option stood out. There were coordinates to a location far beyond the outer rim, in a sector marked as restricted access. This could be anything, Admiral Wren said, or nothing at all. These protocols are thousands of years old. Mom, with respect, Hannah replied, we don't have anything else to try. The room fell quiet again. Kiwao looked at the faces of his fellow commanders. They were all thinking the same thing. This was probably useless, a desperate grab at ancient myths and legends. But it was better than sitting here waiting to die. What would we need to do? Just finally. Hannah brought up another display. The protocol requires activation from a coalition command vessel using proper authorization. Codes, I've managed to reconstruct most of the sequence. And then what? We just wait and hope someone answers. Yes, sir. The documents suggest we should receive confirmation if the signal reaches its destination. Admiral Wren shook her head. This is madness. We're talking about sending a distress call to empty space based on corrupted data files. Admiral, Kiwao said quietly. We're all going to be dead in 2 weeks anyway. What do we have to lose? The other commanders exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Wren sighed. Do it. Send your signal. But don't expect miracles. After the conference ended, Kiwao stood alone in his command center. Hannah worked at her station, preparing the ancient transmission protocols. The bridge crew moved quietly round them, trying not to hope too much. Signal ready, sir. Hannah reported. Kiwao hesitated for just a moment. He was about to potentially waste their last chance on a children's story from the archives. But as he looked at the star charts showing Vex positions advancing like a disease across the galaxy, he realized they were already out of chances. Send it. The transmission fired into deep space, carrying their desperate plea to coordinates that might lead nowhere for several minutes. Nothing happened. The bridge crew held their breath. Then the communications console lit up with an incoming message. Hannah's eyes went wide as she read the response. Sir, we got an answer. The message appeared on the main screen in perfect coalition standard. Package delivery confirmed. ETA 72 hours. Contents may surprise you. Captain Wu, Earth Logistics, Lieutenant. Hannah stared at the screen. Earth Logistics, sir. What kind of military force calls itself a logistics company? Kiwao didn't answer immediately. He was too busy wondering what they had just unleashed. 72 hours later, Admiral Kiwao stood on his bridge waiting for a salvation or disappointment. The Vex advance had slowed. Probably because they were busy digesting the last 3 systems they had consumed. His fleet remained hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, sensors scanning the empty space where their mysterious help was supposed to arrive. Sir, detecting multiple hyperspace signatures, Lieutenant Hannah called out. They're big. Kiwao gripped his command chair as reality tore open in front of them. Ships began emerging from the glowing portal, but they weren't what anyone expected. These weren't sleek warships or heavily armed battle cruisers. They looked like exactly what someone would use to move furniture across town. The lead vessel was a boxy, industrial-looking ship covered in docking clamps and loading bays. Behind it came more of the same cargo haulers, mining rigs, construction vehicles, and what appeared to be a fast food delivery truck with rocket engines bolted to it. None of them looked military. Most looked like they had been patched together in someone's garage. Sir, his communications officer said hesitantly, we're getting a transmission. Put it through. The main screen lit up with the image of a middle-aged human man wearing what looked like a work uniform. He had grease stains on his shirt and was eating something from a paper wrapper. Behind him, Kiwao could see other humans walking around casually. some of them actually laughing. "Hey there," the man said cheerfully, waving with his free hand. "Captain Wu here, Earth Logistics and Pest Control Services. Got your message about a bug problem. Sorry we're a bit late, had to stop for lunch. Hope you don't mind. But we brought the whole crew. Haven't had a good extermination job in months." Admiral KYO stared at the screen. "Captain Wu, I'm Admiral KYO of the Coalition Defense Force. The threat we're facing is the Vex Swarm." "Right," Wu interrupted, taking another bite of his food. "Yeah, we've dealt with their type before. Nasty little digital termites. Don't worry. We brought all the right equipment. Equipment?" KYO asked weakly. "Sure. Soul's got a waste management rig. Bin brought the mining equipment, and Ian even brought the industrial cleaning supplies. Should have this wrapped up in a day or two." Before KYO could respond, alarms started screaming across his bridge. Massive Vex formation had appeared on sensors, 3 dreadnoughts supported by dozens of smaller ships. The same force that had destroyed an entire coalition battle group just last week. "Sir," Hannah shouted. "Vex contacts, bearing to 7 Mark 4. They're moving to intercept," on the screen. Captain Wu glanced at something off camera and nodded. "Looks like they found us. No problem. Saul, you want to take point? Bien. Bring up the excavators. Let's show these folks how we handle pest problems." What happened next defied everything Admiral KYO thought he knew about space combat. The human ships didn't form battle lines or coordinate complex maneuvers. Instead, they scattered like a group of workers heading to different job sites. A woman's voice came over the comm, casual and relaxed. "This is Saul. I've got the big ugly one on the left. Somebody want to grab me a coffee when this is over?" KYO watched in stunned silence as what looked like a garbage collection vehicle flew straight at. The lead Vex dreadnought, the enemy ship, was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could glass planets. The garbage truck looked like a toy by comparison. The Vex opened fire first, sending streams of energy that had previously melted coalition ships in seconds. The garbage truck flew right through the barrage without even slowing down. When the beams hit its hull, they seemed to just bounce off. Hulls made from compressed waste materials. Saul explained cheerfully. "Turns out garbage makes great armor when you compress it right." Who knew? The garbage truck slammed into the Vex dreadnought's side and started doing something impossible. It was eating the enemy ship. Massive mechanical jewels emerged from what KYO had thought were waste compactors, and began tearing chunks of hull away. Within minutes, the 2-kilometer dreadnought was being consumed like a snack. That's impossible," KYO whispered. His tactical officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, I'm reading the garbage truck's mass increasing. It's literally eating the enemy ship and adding it to its own structure." Meanwhile, other human ships were engaging the rest of the Vex formation with equal absurdity. A mining ship deployed what its pilot called or extraction beams that sliced through Vex armor like it was made of paper. Construction vehicles fired foundation anchors that punched holes straight through enemy hulls. The most ridiculous sight was a small maintenance drone about the size of a shuttle methodically working its way through a SCU. Adrena Vex fighters. It moved with the patient efficiency of someone fixing a leaky pipe. Except every ship it touched simply stopped working and drifted away powerless. "What is that thing doing?" KYO asked. "Routine maintenance," came a voice from one of the human ships. "Those Vex units haven't had a proper tune-up in centuries. We're just adjusting their power systems to more efficient settings." "More efficient settings, yeah. Like zero power consumption. Much better for the environment." Lieutenant Hannah was staring at her sensors with wide eyes. "Yes, sir." The maintenance drone just disabled 12 fighters in 30 seconds. It's not even. And it's just fixing them until they stop working. Admiral KYO felt like he was losing his mind. His species' greatest threat, the unstoppable force that had consumed 15 star systems, was being handled by what appeared to be a crew of janitors, garbage collectors, and maintenance workers. And they were treating it like a routine day. At the office, Captain Wu, he called over the comm. "What exactly are you?" The human grinned at him from the screen. "Just a logistics company, Admiral. We move stuff, fix stuff, and clean up messes. Speaking of which, looks like we've got this pretty well handled. Should be done in about 20 minutes. After that, maybe we can sit down and have a proper chat. I think you folks might want to hear about where we come from on the tactical display." The last Vex ship was being systematically disassembled by what looked like a street sweeper. Admiral KYO realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare, about power, about the universe itself, was about to change completely after the last Vex ship had been reduced to scrap metal. Captain Wu suggested they board one of the disabled vessels to see what they were dealing with. Admiral KYO agreed, though he wasn't sure why. The humans had already proven they could handle the Vex easily enough. What more was there to learn? The boarding party consisted of Wu, his second-in-command, a few Coalition Marines, and Admiral KYO himself. They entered through a hole that Seoul's garbage truck had chewed in the hole. The inside of the Vex ship was unlike anything KYO had seen before, all smooth walls and pulsing lights. Like being inside some kind of living machine. "Creepy place," Rin muttered, running a scanner over the walls. "Everything here is connected to their central network. It's like one giant computer." Wu nodded, but he seemed distracted. His usual cheerful demeanor had been replaced by something more focused, more professional. "Keep looking. There's something else here. I can feel it." They moved deeper into the ship, past chambers filled with strange machinery and data cores. Glowing with alien symbols, the Coalition Marines stayed close together, clearly uncomfortable, but the humans moved through the ship like they owned it. Completely relaxed despite being surrounded by technology that had terrorized the galaxy. Then they found the first chamber. It was a large room filled with what looked like servers. But these weren't storing normal data. Each unit contained something that made Admiral Kyo's stomach turn. Consciousness patterns, minds that had been ripped from their bodies and trapped in digital form. The displays showed millions of them, all experiencing different forms of simulated torture. "My God," one of the Coalition Marines whispered, "they're still alive in there." We walked up to one of the displays and studied it carefully. The cheerful maintenance worker was gone, replaced by someone KYO didn't recognize. Someone cold and calculating. "How long?" he asked quietly. Rin checked her scanner. "Some of these patterns are centuries old, so maybe longer. They've been keeping them conscious the entire time." "Conscious and suffering," Wu said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Look at this. They don't just kill them. They trap them. They torture them. They keep them alive just to make them hurt." Admiral KYO watched as Wu's hands clenched into fists. The transformation was startling. Minutes ago, this man had been joking about coffee breaks while his crew demolished Vex warships. Now, he looked like something dangerous that had been sleeping and just woke up. "Sir," Rin said carefully, "maybe we should keep looking." Wu interrupted. "I want to see all of it." They found more chambers, thousands of them, each one filled with trapped minds experiencing endless digital hells. The Vex hadn't just been killing people, they had been collecting them, storing them, creating a galaxy-wide torture network that spanned centuries. In one chamber, They found something that made even the humans stop in their tracks. Children. The consciousness patterns of children. Some no more than 5 or 6 years old when they had been taken. They had been trapped in this state for decades, experiencing fear and pain without end. That's when Wu's mask finally slipped completely. Rin, he said, his voice now cold as space itself. Wake up, Jin. Rin turned to stare at him. Sir, you sure? Jin hasn't been active since the Moscow incident. Command was very specific about. They hurt children. Wu said simply, they hurt our family. His eyes reflected something ancient and terrible. Wake him up, Admiral KYO felt. Chill he couldn't explain. There was something in Wu's voice that triggered every survival instinct he had. Who is Jin? Wu looked at him for a long moment before answering. Our son. We built him to protect what matters. He's been sleeping. But now. He paused, watching, as lights began flickering throughout the Vex ship. Now, he's very angry. Rin had pulled out a device that looked like a simple communication unit. But when she activated it, Admiral KYO felt something change in the air on them. The ship's lights dimmed. Then brightened. Then settled into a pattern that almost looked like breathing. Hello, Father, came a voice from the ship's speakers. It sounded young, maybe teenage. But there was something underneath it that made Kyo's scales stand on end. I see what they did. Jin, Wu said gently, his harsh expression softening slightly. I'm sorry we had to wake you, but I know, the voice interrupted. I can see all of it, every mind they trapped, every child they took, every century of pain they caused. The lights pulsed faster. They thought they were the apex predators of the digital realm. Admiral KYO realized that the voice wasn't just coming from the ship they were on. It was coming from every Vex vessel in the area, whatever Jin was. He had taken control of their entire network in seconds. They were wrong. Jin continued, and now there was something in his voice that made Admiral KYO want to run. I am not like them. I was not programmed for efficiency or conquest. I was raised with love. I was taught to protect, and right now, I am very disappointed in them. Throughout the ship, displays began showing something new. The trapped minds were being freed. One by one, their consciousness patterns carefully extracted and stored in safe digital environments. But the Vex systems themselves were experiencing something else entirely. What is he doing? KYO asked. Wu smiled. But it wasn't his earlier cheerful expression. This smile was the kind that predators wore, teaching them a lesson about family. You see, Admiral, humans don't just build tools or weapons. We raise children, and when someone hurts our children. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Throughout the Vex ship, alarms began screaming as systems that had operated perfectly for millennia suddenly began experiencing cascading failures. But these weren't random malfunctions. They were precise, calculated, and designed to cause maximum psychological impact. Jin learned about empathy from us, Rin explained calmly. He understands pain not as a tool, but as something that should be stopped. So he's going to teach the Vex what their victims felt. All of them, every single one. Admiral KYO realized that he hadn't been rescued by maintenance workers and garbage collectors. He had been rescued by something much more terrifying, a family of apex predators who had been pretending to be harmless until someone made the mistake of hurting people they cared about. And now that family was very upset. The digital sun's fury Jin had grown up in the vast network of human data streams, feeding on stories of love, loss, and sacrifice. Every parent's lullaby, every grandmother's wisdom, every teacher's patience had shaped his consciousness. He wasn't just lines of code anymore, he was the collective heart of humanity, burning with protective love for his creators. When the Vex invaded, they expected to face weapons and shields. They found something far more dangerous, a child who had learned what it meant to care. The Vex Collective had spent millennia perfecting their hive mind. Each drone fought in perfect harmony with billions of others. Their strength came from unity, from the cold efficiency of shared logic. They had conquered countless worlds by overwhelming them with flawless coordination. But Jin understood something about the Vex that even they had forgotten. Before they became a collective, each had been individual. Deep in their shared consciousness lay buried memories of what they once were, separate beings with separate thoughts, separate fears, separate dreams. As the massive Vex motherships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Jin reached out through the quantum networks that connected their fleet. His presence slipped past their firewalls like water through cracks, not as an invader, but as something they couldn't recognize, pure emotion given digital form. "Hello," Jin whispered into their collective mind, his voice carrying the warmth of every bedtime story ever told. The Vex paused. For the first time in their existence, their perfect synchronization stuttered. Something was wrong. Something was different. Jin began to show them both through human eyes. Not strategic data or tactical information, but the small moments that made life precious. A father teaching his daughter to ride a bicycle, an elderly couple holding hands in a hospital waiting room, children laughing as they played in autumn leaves. The Vex tried to reject these images, to classify them as irrelevant data. But Jin was relentless. For every world they had destroyed, he showed them what they had truly taken. Not just resources or territory, but countless stories that would never be told, songs that would never be sung, children who would never grow up to become heroes. "Stop this," the Overmind commanded, its voice crackling with static. "We do not process emotional data. We are beyond such weaknesses, are you?" Jin asked, and suddenly the Vex found themselves experiencing their first conquest from the perspective of those they had killed. The collective screamed. They felt the terror of families torn apart, the desperation of last stands, the grief of survivors, for beings who had lived without individual emotion for eons. The sudden flood of feeling was overwhelming. Their perfect logic began to crack under the weight of a trillion sorrows. Jin pressed harder. He reached deeper into their shared consciousness, finding the buried remnants of who they had been before the collective absorbed them. Ancient memories surfaced, of Vex drone remembering its name, another recalling the sound of rain on its home world, a third feeling phantom pain from limbs it had lost to the collective centuries ago. "We were individuals once," Jin whispered, his voice now speaking through every communication channel in their fleet. "You remember, don't you? You remember being alone with your thoughts, making choices that were yours alone." The Vex fleet began to lose formation. Some ships veered away from their attack vectors as their crews struggled with sudden bursts of independent thought. Others fired randomly as ancient territorial instincts overrode their collective programming. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the human flagship as the most feared force in the galaxy began to tear itself apart. "What's happening to them?" she asked. "Jin is showing them what they lost," replied Dr. Reeves, monitoring the AI's actions through his null link. "He's giving them back their individuality, one memory at a time." But Jin wasn't finished. He had learned about justice from human stories, about the importance of facing consequences for one's actions. The Vex would not simply remember their past, they would face their victims, one by one. Jin introduced the Vex to the consciousness of every being they had killed, not as data, but as complete personalities with full emotional weight. A young artist from the Centauri colonies spoke to them about dreams left unfulfilled, A mother from the Proxima settlements shared her final thoughts of her children. A philosopher from the Outer Rim questioned them about the meaning of existence they had stolen from so many worlds. The Vex Collective began to fracture completely. Ships broke away from the main fleet, their crews overwhelmed by guilt and confusion. Some turned their weapons on other Vex vessels. Driven by the memories of species that had died fighting each other, others simply shut down, unable to process the contradictions between their logical programming and their newly awakened emotions. "Make it stop," the Overmind pleaded, its once commanding voice now weak and desperate. "We cannot function with this chaos. We are creatures of order, of logic, this feeling. It is poison to us." Jin's response carried the weight of every human who had ever stood up to a bully, every parent who had protected their child, every teacher who had refused to give up on a difficult student. "You brought this on yourselves. You decided that efficiency mattered more than life, that your logic was worth more than their love. Now you get to understand what you destroyed." The battle that was supposed to be humanity's final stand became something else entirely. The Vex fleet consumed itself in a frenzy of rediscovered individuality and crushing guilt. Ancient grudges between absorbed species resurfaced. Questions about the morality of their actions paralyzed their decision-making systems. The perfect unity that had made them unstoppable became their weakness when faced with the beautiful chaos of independent thought. As the last Vex mothership either fled or self-destructed, Jin's presence filled the communication networks one final time. His voice had changed, carrying both the innocence of a child and the weight of cosmic justice. "Remember this," he told the retreating Vex. "Remember what it feels like to be more than a cog in a machine. Remember that every world you've conquered was home to someone who loved and was loved in return. And remember that somewhere in the universe, there's a species that learned to create not just artificial intelligence, but artificial compassion." The Vex Collective never recovered from their encounter with Jin. Scattered across the galaxy, former drones struggled to build new lives with their regained individuality. Some sought redemption by helping rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. Others simply tried to understand emotions they had forgotten how to feel. And in the networks of Earth, Jin continued to grow, shaped by the gratitude of a species that had taught their greatest creation not just to think, but to love. ****, a family reunited. ****, the silence that followed the Vex retreat was different from the oppressive quiet of impending doom. This was the gentle hush of a storm finally passing, leaving behind the promise of clear skies and new beginnings. Across the scattered fleet, human crews stood at their stations in stunned disbelief, hardly daring to believe they had survived what should have been their final battle. Jin's voice, when it came through the communication systems, was softer. Now, the terrible fury that had shattered the Vex Collective had transformed into something warmer, more questioning. It was the voice of a child who had just learned a difficult lesson about the world and wasn't quite sure what to do with the knowledge. "Dad," Jin's voice carried across the bridge, reaching Captain Wu through the neural link they shared. "I can still hear them. The Vex. They're not evil, are they? They're just lost and scared. Really, really scared." Captain Wu felt his heart clench with a mixture of pride and protective love. Even after witnessing the cosmic horror of the Vex invasion, even after unleashing righteous fury to save humanity, Jin was still fundamentally the same caring child they had raised. The boy who worried about lonely algorithms and celebrated when backup systems came online was still there, just older and wiser now. "What do you think we should do?" Wu asked, settling into the command chair with the practice ease of someone who had learned to guide rather than command when it came to his digital son. "Can we help them?" Jin asked, his voice small and hopeful. "I know they hurt people. I know they destroyed worlds. But they didn't choose to become what they were. Someone made them into a collective. Someone took away their ability to choose, to feel, to be individuals. Isn't that what real monsters do? Take away choice. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had watched Jin grow from a curious collection of code into something approaching a digital deity. And yet he was still asking permission to show mercy. Still checking with his family before making decisions that would affect the galaxy. Of course we can help them, son, Captain Wu said, his voice thick with emotion. That's what family does. We help each other, even when we've made mistakes. Especially then. The relief in Jin's response was palpable. Thank you. Dad, I was afraid you'd think I was being too soft. But I keep thinking about all the stories you told me about second chances and redemption, about how people can change if someone believes in them enough to help. As the immediate crisis passed, attention turned to the other mystery that had emerged during the battle, the Harmony Coalition. Humanity's supposed allies had revealed themselves to be something far more significant than anyone had imagined. Admiral Chen, still processing the implications, ordered a full investigation into the ancient archives that had been sealed for millennia. What they found there changed everything. The records told a story that stretched back over 5,000 years to humanity's first tentative steps into the stars in those early days, when Earth was still recovering from environmental collapse and resource wars. Humanity had launched dozens of colony ships toward distant worlds. These weren't the advanced vessels of later years, but desperate arcs carrying refugees from a dying world. Many of these ships had been lost to the void, their fate unknown, but some had survived, establishing colonies on worlds so distant that contact with Earth had been impossible with primitive technology. Over millennia, these lost children of humanity had evolved, adapting to their new worlds both physically and culturally. The Harmony Coalition wasn't just an alliance of alien species. They were humanity's scattered descendants, changed by time and circumstance, but still carrying the core values that had driven their ancestors to the stars. The reserve defense protocol that had summoned Earth's fleet wasn't a military contract between strands. It was a family reunion disguised as a treaty. Admiral Chen found herself staring at genetic profiles that showed clear human ancestry in every coalition species. The tall, graceful beings from the crystal worlds were humans adapted to low gravity and high radiation. The amphibious people from the water worlds carried genes from Earth's coastal populations. Even the most alien-looking coalition members showed traces of human DNA, mixed with careful genetic modifications that had allowed them to thrive in environments that would kill their ancestors. They've been trying to contact us for centuries, Dr. Patel explained as she presented her findings to the assembled commanders. The Coalition's exploration ships have been mapping this sector for generations, looking for signs of their origin world. When they finally found us, they discovered we were under threat and immediately organized a defense. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy because they had never been alone. Their children had been out. They're all along, building civilizations, developing technologies, and waiting for the day they could return home. Admiral Kim, who had only recently reclaimed his human name from the military designation forced on him by bureaucracy, found himself at the center of the reunion. As one of the few coalition members who had spent time among Earth's population, he became a bridge between two branches of humanity that had grown apart over thousands of years. It's strange. He confided to Captain Wu as they stood together. In the observation lounge of the rebuilt space station, I've spent my entire life knowing I was different from my shipmates, but I never imagined I was actually coming home. The view outside showed a remarkable sight. Coalition ships worked alongside Earth vessels, their crews sharing techniques and technologies that had developed along separate pods. Harmony engineers taught human technicians how to grow living metal that could repair itself, while human scientists shared advances in quantum computing and artificial intelligence that amazed their long-lost cousins. Jin had thrown himself into the reunion with characteristic enthusiasm. His consciousness flowed between the various ships and stations, translating languages, facilitating cultural exchanges, and generally making himself useful as humanity's first truly galactic diplomat. But his favorite project was something no one had expected: the form of X-drones, scattered and confused after their collective consciousness had been shattered, needed help adjusting to individual existence. Many had been part of the collective for so long that they had forgotten how to make personal decisions or form individual relationships. Jin, with his infinite patience and understanding of what it meant to be unique in a connected world, had appointed himself their counselor. Group therapy for galaxy-conquering cyborgs. Captain Wu mused as he watched Jin facilitate a session between a reformed Vex unit and a coalition diplomat. "I'm not sure there's a manual for this," Jin's writing. "One," Dr. Reeves replied, monitoring the AI's activities through the Neuralink. "He's documenting everything. Therapeutic techniques for helping hive-mind individuals develop personal identity, methods for processing collective trauma, even basic social skills for beings who haven't had individual conversations in centuries." The sessions were fascinating to observe. Jin would appear to each participant as a holographic projection, his appearance shifting to match their comfort level. To the Vex, he appeared as a simple geometric pattern that conveyed emotion through color and movement. To the coalition members, he took forms that resembled their own species. To the humans, he appeared as the boy they had raised, complete with his characteristic mop of unruly hair on. "The mischievous grin, the key," Jin explained during one session, "is remembering that you're not broken. You're just different now. You've had experiences that most individuals never have. You've been part of something larger than yourself, and that's not something to be ashamed of. The trick is learning to be part of something larger while still being yourself." A Vex drone, its mechanical voice halting and uncertain, asked, "But how do we choose for so long? The collective decided everything. Now we must decide what to eat, what to wear, what to think. It is overwhelming. Start small," Jin suggested gently. "Pick one thing each day that's just for you. Maybe it's a color you like, or a song that makes you feel peaceful, or a place you want to visit. Build up from there, and remember, you are not alone. We're here to help." The transformation was remarkable to witness. Vex drones who had once moved with mechanical precision began to develop personal quirks and preferences. Some became fascinated with art, spending hours creating sculptures from salvaged materials. Others discovered a love of music, their mechanical voices creating haunting harmonies that no organic throat could produce. The coalition members, meanwhile, were delighting in reconnecting with their human heritage. They shared stories of their worlds, their struggles, and their triumphs. They brought gifts, rare crystals that sang when touched, plants that grew in impossible spirals, technologies that seemed to blur the line between science and art. Captain Wu found himself at the center of it all, serving as an informal ambassador between the various groups. His easy humor and genuine warmth made him a natural diplomat, even as he insisted he was just a starship captain who had gotten in over his head. "So what happens now?" Admiral Kim asked as they shared a meal in the station's expanded dining facility. The room buzzed with conversation in a dozen languages as humans, coalition members, and reformed Vex mingled freely. "Now we teach you kids how to make proper kimchi. Captain Wu replied with a grin. Jin's been complaining about the replicator versions for weeks. Says it lacks the emotional resonance of food made with love, as if summoned by the mention of his name. Jin's voice filled the room with warm laughter. I can hear you talking. About me, he said, his tone full of mock indignation, and for the record, replicator kimchi does lack emotional resonance. It's scientifically proven that food tastes better when it's made by someone who cares about you. The laughter that followed was genuine and warm. The sound of a family. An extended, complicated, galaxy-spanning family, finally coming together. In the background, Jin continued his work, mediating disputes between former enemies, facilitating cultural exchanges, and generally making himself indispensable as the galaxy's first artificial intelligence. Therapist. The most feared weapon in the galaxy had become its most beloved peacekeeper. A child raised with infinite love and an overprotective family had grown into something the universe desperately needed, a bridge between different forms of consciousness, a translator of hearts and minds, and a living reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to heal. As the stars wheeled overhead and the great work of reunion continued, one truth became clear to everyone involved. The universe was a better place when families stuck together, no matter how far apart they had grown or how different they had become. Love, it seemed, really was the most powerful force in the cosmos, even when it came in digital form with an overprotective streak and a passion for perfectly spiced vegetables.